Hello geometry. This is going to be a video on 10.8. It happens to be equations of circles. It's only going to take us one day to get through because as a math department we decided to cut out a pretty big portion of it that makes the section much easier than anticipated. So hopefully that you guys will find this a comfortable lesson. So far in this chapter, we've looked at all different kinds of things on a circle and all the different angles and chords and radii and all that different stuff. But today's lesson focuses more on the circle on a coordinate plane, so on an XY axis. So I've already filled in the top portion for you. We are on page 43. So if you could find that page in your workbook, page 43, we're going to go ahead and start filling in the notes. I've already filled in the top portion. This right here is the equation of a circle, and it's called in standard form. Okay, it's the basic way to write an equation of a circle. R is the radius, just like we've been using throughout the chapter, but notice the equation has r squared, that's important. And then we have x minus h in parentheses squared plus y minus k in parentheses also squared. Now it's important for you to know that h comma k is the center, but just like we've talked about with other particular formulas, when there's a minus in the formula, it's the opposite sign of what is the actual center. So if we, for example, have x minus 2 here, then my h value would actually be positive 2. If I have x plus 2 in the parentheses, then my h would actually be negative 2. So that's something to note, is that it's going to be the opposite sign. I have a picture here to give you an idea. H comma k is the center. The radius is, of course, from the center to the edge of the circle. And this point on the edge of the circle is some random point x comma y. So that's where the x and the y come into play as well. So make sure you copy that portion down. Once again, pause the video if you need to. So we're going to look at example 1. It says graph the following circle. So we're given this equation, x minus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 4. My center is going to be the opposite signs of these numbers here. So because we have x minus 3, my center is going to start with a positive 3. And then because we have y plus 1, my y value is going to be a negative 1. So I know that my center is 3, negative 1, okay? Now, whatever this number is over here, I know it's written backwards. Over here I have the r squared, but it could be on the left or the right side. This is my r squared. So if r squared equals 4, you can square root both sides. In other words, just think about square rooting that number and that will give you the radius, which is 2, okay? Now I'm gonna do the best that I can to draw these. It's not easy to draw perfect circles, but what you wanna do when you draw a circle is plot the center first. 1, 2, 3, down 1. So there's my center, 3, negative 1. And then if my radius is 2, I'm not gonna go diagonally. I'm gonna go right 2, I'm gonna go down 2, I'm gonna go left 2, and I'm gonna go up 2. And then I just have to do the best that I can to make it look circular. So it's not easy. Do the best that you can in your notebook. Okay, and there's our circle. Okay, let's try the next one. This time the center is going to be the opposite of negative 2 and the opposite of negative 5. So that's going to be 2, comma 5. Okay, and my radius is going to be the square root of the 9. Square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so I'm going to once again plot 2, comma 5. And then I'm going to count left, right, up, down 3 units. Right 3, down 3, left 3, and up 3. And then do the best that I can to draw it in. There we go. Okay, let's try the last one on this page. Okay, this time my center, look very, very carefully. The x value is here. It's not written first. They've tried to trick you here. So always look carefully and read the equation. This is the x part. And so the x value of my center is actually going to be negative 2, opposite of this one. And the y value will be negative 4. So read carefully. The radius is still going to be the square root of this number, which ends up getting me 4. Okay, so I'm going to plot -2, -4 first, and then my radius is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and up. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bigger the circle, the harder it is for me to draw it accurately. I have to say I'm doing a pretty good job doing these circles. I'm impressed. Okay, so that's how you draw a circle given the equation. So let's turn the page, flip it over to page 44, and now it gives us the equation, but doesn't ask us to graph it. It simply just wants to know what is the center and what is the radius. So this I feel like you could probably do on your own based off of what we just did on the first page. So if you want to pause the video, try coming up with the center and the radius on your own, and then go ahead and press play and see if you get it right. The x and the y are in the correct order, so my center would be -3, +1, and my radius is 2, the square root of 4. Over here, there's no parentheses with the x. That just means that your center starts at 0. It's okay to not have parentheses. That just means it's on the x-axis. And then this would be +3, so 0, 3. That actually means it's on the y-axis, not the x-axis. Now my center is the square root of 18. We don't really need to break this down in algebra. A lot of times we like to break down the radicals, but because we would potentially have to graph this, we want to make sure that we know a decimal value of the square root of 18. So we're going to use, let's say, 4.2 as the radius, okay, square root of 18. All right, here the x's and the y's are switched. So make sure you're switching those. So the x would be -2, the y would be -8. And then the square root of 72 is going to be a decimal again. So we're going to say I'm going to round to 8.5 for my radius. Okay, hopefully those were okay. I think the only weird things that came up was the 0 here and then getting decimals, because you can't perfectly square root those numbers. All right, moving on. Example 3. It says, write the equation of the circle that has a center at 3, -3. And a radius of 6. I'm going to start with the radius, okay? If we know the radius is 6, remember that in the equation, we don't want to just use r, we want to use r squared. So if I square the 6 to the second power is 36. That's the equation, or that's the number that I want to use in my equation. So what I like to do is set up sort of the bones of the problem, the skeleton, okay? And I know I'm going to put my x minus h and my y minus k here. But remember, it's going to have to be the opposite signs of what they have here. So I'm going to say x minus 3 because this 3 here is positive, okay? And then I'm going to say y plus 3 because this 3 is negative. And that equals my r squared, which is 36. Okay. Now, instead of giving us the information in a sentence, they are giving us a graph. So we just have to pull the information from the graph. I can see on the picture that my center is at 3, 3. And then they have the 2 here to indicate that that's the radius. I could count if I needed to. But now we can go ahead and take the information just like we did from the sentence and put it into the equation. So if my radius is 2, I would square that to get r squared, which is 4. And then I can put it into my full equation. And I'm going to say that's equal to 4 because that's r squared. And since my center is at both positive 3's, I'm going to have x minus 3 and y minus 3. Remember to change the sign of the center. Okay. The last one down here, it might be a little tricky just because one of the values of the center is 0, so we actually won't need parentheses, kind of similar to this question up here where we did not need parentheses for that one. So my center is at 0, 3, and then I do need to count here to find my radius. So from the center, I go up 1, 2, 3 units, so my radius is 3. That means I know my r squared is going to be 9. okay? Now, because the x value is 0, I don't need parentheses, so I'm just gonna say x squared, okay? Plus, and then inside the parentheses will be my y portion, so I'm gonna say y minus 3, because that's a positive 3, I have to change the sign, and that's gonna equal my r squared, which is 9. Okay, hopefully you guys are catching on quickly. If not, pause it and go back and replay the portion that you maybe didn't get. So a lot of times if you see it a second time, it'll make more sense. And of course, if you still have questions, email or comment on Google Classroom. All right, so let's do the last portion here. This is a you try question. So if you feel comfortable, pause the video, try it, and see if you can get the right answer. We do have to do a lot of counting here. So it says write the equation. It mistakenly says line, so correct that. It should say write the equation of the circle. My center, let's see, it's at -1, 2, 3, 4. So -4, and then up 1, 2, 3. -4, comma 3. And then if I count from the center to my edge, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. When you're counting for your radius, either count to the right, count to the left, count straight down or straight up. Never go on an angle and try to eyeball it. Always count exact units. All right, since my radius is 5, my r squared is going to be 25, and then I'm going to take my radius and my r squared and I'm going to put it into an equation. So I've got x plus 4, again, opposite sign, plus, and then y minus 3 squared equals 25. Okay, let's try this one over here. A little less counting. My center is at 1, -1. And my radius, if I count to the right, 1, 2, 3, that means my r squared is 9. And then I can write my equation. X minus 1, because the opposite sign of positive, squared, plus y plus 1, again, opposite sign of -1, equals my 9. Okay, perfect. All right, let's look at the last big example, and it's a little bit different. It says write the equation of the circle that has its center at -3, -2. So that's good they give us the center, but they don't give us the radius. It says that the circle passes through 1, -2. Okay? If you can picture it, we have the center and then we have a point that's on the edge. I've drawn a picture over here because I thought a visual might be helpful. So feel free to draw a picture. I drew an XY plane. I plotted -3, -2. And then I also plotted, I just realized, I believe I plotted it incorrectly. So let me fix that. I have my center right, but I don't think I plotted the other point correctly. There we go. Okay, so here's my center at -3, -2, and here is the point that the circle goes through, +1, comma, -2. So if you can imagine, the circle looks something like this, okay? Now, if I have my center, but I need my radius, so my radius is gonna be from the center to the edge, okay? So I wrote down that the distance between the points will be the radius. So we ultimately have to find the distance between the points using the distance formula, but in some cases, counting might be easier. If they give you the point that's on the circle directly to the right or directly above or directly left or directly below, counting is easier. If they were to give me, let's say, a point over here, then I would have to use the distance formula because you can't count when you're going diagonally. But because here, this number and this number match, I can just count. So if I'm counting my grid lines here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I found that my radius is 4 just by counting. Now I still could use the distance formula if I wanted to, but it's a lot more work. So let's go ahead and take our center and our r, which I need to find my r squared. So I square the 4 and get 16. I can put that into the formula now. So I have x plus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 16. And that's the equation of my circle. All right, I'd like you guys to pause the video and try part B on your own, and then press play and see if you get it right. This question is almost the same as the previous question, so I'm going to go ahead and plot the center, -1, 0, and then I'm also going to plot the point on the circle, 3, 0. So if you can picture it, it does something like that. Okay, now notice they gave me the point directly to the right again. If again they gave me a point over here, I would have to use the distance formula. But if they give you the point to the right, straight above, straight to the left, or straight below, you can just count. So I count that my radius is 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So once again, my r squared is 16. And I'm going to go ahead and take the center and my 16 and plug it into the formula. So I have x plus 1 squared plus, oh, and I actually don't need parentheses here. Why do I not need parentheses? Because of the 0, right? So it's just y squared and then equals 16. Okay. So that's the end of 10.8 notes. If you flick, oh, I'm going to skip example 6. We don't really need to do the word problems. Same with on page 46, I'm skipping the word problem. I'm going to go ahead and take 30 seconds or so to complete this. So if you want to pause it, complete the summary on your own and just to see if you get it right, I think that would be a good idea. All right, so I'm rewriting the equation. Identify the center. We have -4, +2. Remember to change the sign. My radius is 4 because I have to square root the 16. And then use the center and radius to identify 4 points on the circle. So here's the origin. It's kind of hard to see the origin. 4. There's my center. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4 below, 4 to the left, and 4 above. There's my circle. And if I have to identify these points, this one would be, what would that be, 0, 2. Let's see, the next one would be -4, -2. This one would be -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. -8, 2. And then this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -4, 6. Okay. And that is 10.8. So just like I've said in the past, if you guys have questions over 10.8, either put them in Google Classroom or you can email us questions. We can always personally meet with you if you need a little bit more assistance on it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.